What's up, you guys? This is Devin with Century FX Studios, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Canon's guns blazing with the R5 and R6 cameras that are coming out next week, or in a few days. I haven't really been counting. But anyway, the R5 is the Big Daddy Pro camera with the 45 megapixels, 8K, 8K RAW, C-Log, 422, 10-bit, all this greatness, 20 frames a second electronic shutter, 12 frames a second mechanical shutter. Same thing with the Eos-r6, except it's going to be only 20 megapixels, no 8K, but still an amazing deal for about $2,600. And of course, the Eos-r5 is going to be somewhere around, just like I guessed it, about $38, $39 to about $4,000, just like a new 5D, just a little bit more money. And that's fair. I think that everything that Canon did was more than just fair, it was just over the top. But the first thing we need to talk about today is the overheating issue that you might incur with the Eos R5. Now I got the specs right here. But basically, you can do 8K RAW 30p, you can do 8K 30p. You can also do 4K 60 and 4K 30. I believe you can get frame rates up to 200p in 4K, but I'm not sure. I have to double check that. I'll put the stats here in the video somewhere because I really want to get this video out. So don't hate me in the comments. Oh, you said it could do this, it don't do this. No, I got the camera. Don't do that. All right. So basically, when you go into that 8K RAW 30p, now that's the Big Daddy format. You not only shooting 8K, but you shooting 8K pretty much uncompressed. Like, you're not having any kind of IPB or anything making the image look like something you don't want to look like. It's not a JPEG video in any sense of the imagination. It's almost like a raw picture except with a video file. It is huge. You can only record 20 minutes of this at a time if it's working properly. But for whatever reason, if you're in a hot situation or your Eos R5 overheats, you can only shoot for 20 minutes. If it overheats before then or after then or whatever, you're going to have to cut the camera off. And you're going to have to wait 10 minutes. And then when you cut the camera back on, after 10 minutes, it only gives you about 3 minutes of recording time, and then you got to cut it off again. I believe if you wait 20 minutes, it'll give you close to 8 minutes of record time and 8K RAW 30p, but I'm not sure. But this is definitely something different. Not only is Canon getting ahead of the bat talking about it's going to overheat, but they also know that this is what's going to happen when it overheats and how you're going to rectify it. I am not mad at Canon about this. I'm going to tell you about that later. But let's go down to 4K at 60p. Now, you got to understand that 4K at 60p, you get 35 minutes of that. Now, this is the slow-mo or fast frame rate that you can get for buttery smooth imagery coming out of your video. Now, for the 4K at 60, this could be a really, really heavy format to use too, because a lot of people don't understand that even though you're shooting at 4K, that 60 frames per second is a lot for the camera to take. It's close to 8K. So, or if not more memory than 8K consumption, depending on how you film it. So you got to understand that you only get, when it's working properly, 4K, 60p, 35 minutes of it. Now you get 35 minutes of this. Now if you wait, like I said, if it overheats, you wait 10 minutes, you'll get 10 minutes of record time. So it's a little bit less taxing, I guess, on the camera, and it can produce a little bit more time after you overheat to recover and, you know, give you some more shoot time. But that's not bad, because think about it. If you're recording 4K at 60, you're probably recording slow motion. You're going to slow it down in post. You're not going to be using these huge 50-minute, 100-minute clips of 60p unless you're going to film your whole video like that because you want the smooth motion of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you can also go to 30p and get some similar smooth motion. Most people are probably going to be filming in 30p if they just want smooth motion over a long period of time. And it seems like if you record 4K at 30p, it's not as taxing on the processor or the camera, so you should be fine. And they don't even have any protocols for if you overheat at 30p, because they don't expect that to happen to you at all. Now, if you're in a hot situation outside filming in the summertime, like most of us will be when the camera comes out in quite a few days, you're going to be wondering whether it can overheat based off of these specs, and you're going to be testing it. I think Peter McKinnon got the camera in his hand already. I'm pretty sure Tony Northup, Jared Paul, and all these cats are going to have the camera if they don't have the camera as of this recording time. All right, let's get into what I think. Now, you know I got to talk about some stuff. Basically on my perspective. From my perspective, we really need to think about what people are going to be using 8K for. Now, a lot of people might be complaining, Devin, you got to be mad at them. You got to be mad at them, Devin, because you're very critical of Canon. Not this time. As a matter of fact, I think Canon performed above my expectations. I thought that, it was just going to be 8K, maybe at 24p, but not only did they do, I think they're going to give you 24p, but I'm not sure. It doesn't say anything about it, but they're saying 30p, and not only 30p at 8K, but they're giving it to you raw, and they're giving you the ability in some of these modes, if not all of these modes, to use C-Log, a grading ability for you to play with the colors. Now, I know S-Log on Sony is so hard to grade, but I love Canon cameras, of course the Canon colors. If Canon has a great C-Log that's easy to grade, I might actually even get into color grading with such high resolutions. They don't even offer C-Log on some of these lower end cameras that are old, that they should have been offering C-Log in to begin with, but nevertheless, they don't give you that option. So, with all that being said, I might actually get into color grading if I get this camera because I love Canon colors, and if the grading is good, I'm going to love it, I'm going to get into it. But nobody's going to be using 8K for just anything. I mean, I would say no medium like Netflix or YouTube is actually looking or probably can even present 8K in the fashion that it was supposed to be presented in. So a lot of people are not going to be using 8K. If they use 8K, they're probably going to be downsampling it. So going from 8K images that you capture with your camera and downscaling it to 4K to get more juice, sharpness, and maybe even more dynamic range out of this image. Now, if you do that, that's a good way to use 8K, but it might not be a wise way to use the camera because the camera obviously has some overheating issues that Canon wants to let us know about out of the gate. And you might be saying to yourself, well, why would Canon even tell us about the overheating issue? Why don't they just spit it out like Sony did? I think Canon is really trying to just put everything on the table. They know cameras are not selling. They know that people might get really, really mad and curse the company out again because of the things that they're crippling with. Shout out to the cripple hammer from Camera Conspiracies. They're crippling everything, and this is not the best time, especially during the coronavirus and all these things that are going around, hindering camera sales for them to look bad even again with camera sales and the biggest camera that they claim to be coming out right now. For 8K downscale to 4K is a great way to use this camera, and then Canon has this ability to leapfrog. Now, since the R6 is coming out, we're going to talk about the R6 in just a second, but Canon has this ability to leapfrog because not only do people want the R6, but they also want the R5 because the R5 gives you all these things that you never got before. Even if it overheats, nobody's going to care because nobody really cares about 8K RAW 30p because they are not able to use it all that much. Some people will care. I'm not going to say nobody cares, but as far as an exporting format, people are probably willing to bear with one of the only cameras at an affordable cost that can give you 8K. So that's something to think about. Like, I'm not saying nobody cares about 8K, 8K RAW, 8K 30p, and all this other stuff. And I'm not saying that nobody cares about the recording limit. Yes, they want to record longer, 60 minutes, maybe even unlimited recording time. But Canon already has told you this camera is not designed to run 8K. You can do it, but do it with this big yellow exclamation point, this caution symbol. They know it's going to overheat. It's going to overheat on all of us, and we know it's going to happen. But how bad is it? Is it going to be worth it based off of what the industry is asking for and based off of what you want personally as a filmmaker? So we already know that this is pretty much 99% heavily pushed towards video makers because Canon knows that this is a video thing. But now since Canon has this technology in a camera, regardless of it overheating, they have room to improve. Now they're probably going to come out with another Eos-r 5 or an update to it with a fan in it, or some people are going to make, or Canon might make a third-party fan or another fan accessory that you can put on it, maybe somehow to cool the camera down if you're willing to have such a big camera format. Or they might have some kind of firmware update that helps it dissipate or helps it, I don't know, record in a better format and it'll be less heat. I don't know. But they have some room to grow because a lot of people are not going to be asking for more than troubleshooting from this camera. People are not going to ask for more than 45 megapixels. They're not going to ask for more than 20 frames a second. They're probably going to ask for more like buffer time, but that's just an upgraded processor for Canon. That's not an entirely new camera body. They're not going to ask for different cards because most people don't know about CFast cards yet, or CF Express cards yet. CF Express is what they actually have. Most people are not going to ask for more than a UHS-2 SD card because technology hasn't even got that far. Canon has leapfrogged themselves to a position where not only are they going to have a popular purchasing from this camera, but they're also going to have a stake in the game that nobody else has. Now they're going to come out with cameras with 8K, and they're going to keep coming out with cameras with 8K. They're going to keep coming out with cameras with 4K in the exact same specs, just minuscule updates, and this is better for the company. Why? Because they're at a time where people are not purchasing cameras like that, and they're going to make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So this leapfrog is going to help Canon just sell Canon cameras from here on out. All right, and now I want to talk about the last little section of this where we're talking about the users of Canon. I think this R6 and R5 blast of information, blast of technology, blast of cheaper camera from Canon, it was really for the people who shot Canon. And let me explain why. This is the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first two cameras to have IBIS, or Canon's version of embodied sensor stabilization. So that's great. They're touting 5 stops of image stabilization, and this includes the IS that might come from your lens or something like that. So if I have an old EF lens, I convert it, put it on my R5, it has image stabilization like my 300 millimeter, my 70 to 200 millimeter. If I put both of those on the R5, they also have their own stabilization, and then Canon has a sensor stabilization on top of that. On top of that, that's extremely needed because it's one of our first 45 megapixel cameras from Canon. Now, of course, we had the EOS Canon 5 DSR, but this new EOS-r 5 sports a sensor that hasn't apparently been made by Canon. This is yet to be seen because Canon is always behind on the dynamic range and the low light ability, but the EOS-R is pretty good at it. Another thing that's good about this camera is that it's the first of its class. There's almost no 40 megapixel cameras on the market for Canon at all at this price range, period. At such a low price range. It's the first of its class, and now Canon doesn't have to work so hard. They can just modify something that they already have that's great. I'm pretty sure this sensor is going to be great. I'm sure it's going to look great. I'm sure it's going to be past anything that Sony can do. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be past the Panasonic S1H, because the Panasonic S1H still focuses a little bit worse, or the S1, whichever one it is, a little bit worse than the Canons do on a dual pixel autofocus. And they said something about a better dual pixel autofocus. And then if their eye tracking autofocus in photos is any better, this is like the first in class camera that we've had to call our own. Then the focusing. Like, most of the cameras that Canon has are DSLRs. It's not the mirrorless cameras, and even if they are the mirrorless cameras, they don't remotely have the focusing system of a Sony as far as the pictures are concerned. So focusing system, if it's better than eye tracking autofocus, better than all these things, and frames per second, one of the first in this class to have 12 over 20 frames per second. Like, I'm telling you guys, it's going to be amazing. And a lot of people are going to buy this camera, the R5. Why? Because Canon hasn't given us anything like this, ever. Hasn't given us so many different new functionalities in one camera to call our own. And people are going to love the R6 because it's a baby R5. The R6 is going to be amazing. But at the same time, because it's cheap, of course it's cheap. It's got a whole bunch of stuff from the R5. It's almost like the 7D Mark II and what it did to the 1DX, except these are coming out at the same time, garnering a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm for Canon at the same time. They have now mastered their technology to the point where they can bring out two bodies at the same time with similar specs, but not ostracize their base and not make people who have crop frames feel better than the people who have full frame cameras. And these are both full frame cameras. So I think Canon did a lot of great things. I can talk about this forever because I am so impressed with Canon. I cannot stress that enough. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day. What does this say about the future of Canon? Is there going to be another 1DX? Is there going to be another flagship? And if there's going to be a R1 or 1R or EOS 1R, what is it gonna be like if they're giving us such a great camera right now? And what does that say about all the other cameras? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, because I cannot be more excited. Having a DSLR is still not bad in this day and age, but let me tell you, that R5 and that R6 are gonna be something worth getting if you like Canon. I'm done with CFXTV Studios, and stay tuned for the next episode.